Hey, kindergarten and first grade, it's Mrs. Seals back for our next science lab. Hopefully you remember for the past couple weeks we've been talking about different forms of energy. We've talked about light energy, which we observe with our eyes, and we talked about sound energy, which we observe with our ears. Today we're going to be talking about a third form of energy, which is called thermal energy. So if you're in kindergarten, your target says, I can use the senses to explore thermal energy. And if you're in first grade, your target says, I can identify and discuss how thermal energy is important to everyday life. So, energy, hopefully you remember, is the ability to cause change or do work. And there are the three forms again that we've been talking about: sound, light, and thermal. So thermal energy is energy related to the temperature of an object. It's measured with a thermometer, and it just means heat. So when you hear that word thermal, which kind of sounds like a big word, a big science word, just think heat. Thermal energy is when we add heat to something. And today we're going to talk about how we observe heat by feeling or touching with our sense of touch. And we're going to talk about ways it's important to us. So how is thermal energy used in our everyday lives? Here is where you can pause the video, talk to a grown-up. You could even look around your house and see what you can see that creates heat or creates thermal energy, and think about how we use that. When you're ready, come back and I'll show you some that I thought of. We use thermal energy to cook our food or bake in the oven, bake cookies. We use thermal energy to blow dry our hair, or if you curl or straighten your hair, you're also using thermal energy. To iron our clothes, to have a campfire or cook s'mores over a campfire, to dry our clothes in a dryer. There are many, many more ways that we use thermal energy in our daily lives. These are just some of the more common ones. So we are going to do an experiment with thermal energy. We are going to see how heat will change some crayons. So if you look over here, let me get this all set up. If you look over here, I have these crayons that have been glued to this piece of, what's it called? Cardboard. This piece of cardboard. They're just normal crayons right now. If I touch them, they're hard. You can see that they have their own shape. Okay, they're not acting liquidy or watery and running down the cardboard. They're just glued on there. So what we're going to do is we are going to add thermal energy to these crayons with a blow dryer and see what happens to them and how we can change them. Okay. Now, what you could do at home, and the kids who are here in school, they are going to be drawing a before and after picture of these crayons. So they're going to draw and describe what the crayons are like right now. Remember, the first couple weeks of school, we were talking all about different ways we can describe objects by their color, shape, size, texture, all of those things. And then after we add thermal energy to them, we are going to see how they're different and talk about them and describe them. So right now, like I said, they're hard. They each have their own shape. They're not changing shape. They are all pretty much the same shape, which is like a cylinder with a triangle on the end. Some of them don't have triangle tips anymore, but they're cylinders, so that means they have flat circles on each end and they're long. Okay, so I described their color, their shape, their size, their texture, and we are ready to see how these crayons change when we add thermal energy to them. Are you ready? This may take a couple of minutes to get going. Just watch carefully, and after a couple minutes I'll stop it and we can talk about it. This is something you could do at home. Make sure you have a parent's permission, and parents, just a tip, if you do this, the Rose Art brand and the brands that you can buy like at dollar stores and things like that are a little bit more inexpensive, those actually will change from the heat much faster. The Crayolas and the brands that cost a little bit more money, they don't change as quickly, so it will take longer. But the Rose Arts and the ones that you can buy for a little bit less money are actually better for this activity. All right, and all I did was hot glue them to cardboard. You could also do poster board, anything like that. All right, are you ready to start? Let's see how we can change these crayons using thermal energy. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and stop now just for the sake of time, but you can tell, here, let me move my laptop a little bit closer. So hopefully you noticed that when I added thermal energy to these crayons, they started melting. Hopefully you see all that wax that was hard. Remember before we said these crayons were hard. And then when it got hot, it turned into more of a liquid and it started dripping down and running down this piece of cardboard. The cool thing about crayon wax is that once it cools off again, it's going to harden. So some of these pieces right here, well, that one's not, but some of them have already started to cool off and re-harden. They're not still liquidy that are running down the cardboard. Okay, so what happened when we added thermal energy to the crayons is that they started to change from what we call a solid to a liquid. Many of them lost their shape, they got softer, they started to spread out. If we were to continue doing this, they would eventually all completely turn into a liquid and run down. For the sake of time, we're going to stop now, but I wanted to show you how we can change things by adding thermal energy to them. So again, this is something you could do at home. If you would like, if you have adult supervision, make sure that you are being safe, okay? I hope that you had a good time looking at and discussing thermal energy and seeing how we could change these crayons with thermal energy. And I will talk to you next week. Bye, guys.